Welcome to Web3 Buzz, where we talk products, communities, and careers in Web3. Every week, we bring awesome people from the Web3 world and talk about what they're building and how they're disrupting products and communities with innovation and inclusivity. Hi, Agyle. Welcome to Web3 Buzz, and thanks for coming onto the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Agyle, can you introduce yourself to the audience, maybe go over your professional experience, journey in crypto, and how you came into founding Talisman?
Yeah, sure. So I go by Agyle online. Entered the workforce and years ago with an interest in game design and 3D art and sort of creating interactive experiences. I've kind of being sort of focused on game design. I just got straight into doing sort of startups. Like one of the first things I ever worked on was I tried to create my own games company with a games programmer that was my colleague, and I ended up sort of going down the rabbit hole of doing startups and went from 3D art and game design into working with 3D scanning tech and trying to apply that to real estate and to like sort of productize that. And I've had some experience actually in esports as well, and community organization and running esports events. I got into Web3 and crypto in 2017 when a friend of mine told me about the incredible, run up that Bitcoin had in 2017, and told me that I needed to get into crypto and learn about it. And at that time I was unemployed, and I was sort of wanted to actually starting to learn front-end web development. I was starting to learn how to build applications with React. And I met a gentleman in a co-working space who I started collaborating with. He was a smart contract engineer, which was quite rare back in 2017. And he was sort of like enjoying the freedom and independence that being a smart contract engineer sort of brought him, but had found that he was sort of quite burnt out from just sort of helping people to build ICO contracts over and over again. And I sort of brought this, we had complementary skills. Like I had this, design and multimedia skills, and was learning to build the front ends. And we started thinking about how we could create interesting mechanisms with Ethereum smart contracts. And so built a bunch of funky stuff, just started hacking together and working on crazy projects. And we ended up founding an agency business to help all of the ICO companies that had raised capital but were sort of shorthanded. Like there was so few engineers that understood the tech stack back then, and it was incredibly nascent. And so we founded this agency. It was quite amateurish to begin with. We didn't really know that much about what we were doing, and but over time we actually ended up sort of creating quite a well-known global Web3 venture studio. So we created a company. Our company was called FlexDApps, where we plucked that name out of the air, and we helped our friends and colleagues to launch a bunch of different projects, mostly smart contract protocols. And we learned a lot. We've been building things for many years. And so I was building things for about 3.5 years with Flex. And in April of 2021, some of the guys I was working with that were under my employ at Flex, we decided to create Talisman. We had the opportunity to work on Talisman, thanks to Hypersphere Ventures originally approached us and sort of outlined how the ecosystem was in need of a wallet extension and a number of things. And we started to become very interested in the problem of multi-chain user experience. So we kind of just got really nerd sniped by the idea. And now a bunch of the folks that were working for me previously at FlexDApps are now my equity co-founders in Talisman. And it's been just over 9 months so far. And we have originally conceptualizing the idea to raising money and building our initial product and releasing it to a small set of early alpha testers and community members. So it's been exciting.
It's a pretty interesting experience. So can you explain a bit more about what is the problem that Talisman is trying to solve? What is its overall vision and what is its value proposition?
Sure. I guess there's a few different things that we're trying to sort of solve for. So I guess, first of all, we identified that Polkadot.js isn't an adequate consumer product for now that we have parachains and we have real value and we have applications being deployed, and those parachain teams and application developers need to attract users to the ecosystem and to use their applications. Polkadot.js is an amazing dev tool, but it's really obtuse and difficult for people who are non-technical to wrap their head around. So we sort of are getting our foot in the door and getting into the market by solving the problem of just enabling users to more easily interact with applications and to see all of their balances in one place, which is not straightforward. Like if you have 100 parachains and you have a wallet, that wallet has to solve the problem of polling those chains and figuring out all of the assets that the user has. The cross-chain capabilities of Polkadot create another layer of complexity in that you could have Polkadot or Kusama on any number of chains. So you could have 100 dots split across 20 chains or more. So initially, we're sort of helping people to just interact with applications, understand where all their assets are, and onboard easily into Polkadot. But I think broadly, we have the goal of helping to catalyze composability in Polkadot. So I think one of the things that's really amazing about Ethereum is you have this, I guess, like public namespace where all of these applications exist. It's this, and those applications can call other applications, and you have, as a user, you get a key pair, you have an Ethereum address, and with that Ethereum address, I have some Ether, and I can now use 100 different financial instruments or applications, all with the same identity, all with the same shared value, and all of the value is interoperable because the builders on Ethereum, they converge on ways of building things, social conventions for how to build things out of rational self-interest. If the one person builds a DEX, and someone else wants to launch a coin, they just launch that coin in a way which is can interoperate with that DEX. And then now the DEX has $1 million of liquidity in that coin. Someone else builds a money market and they want to support that DEX and that coin as well. And so it's these sort of composability is this property that all of these applications have, and it emerges out of the collective rational self-interest of the builders, because they want to, they're more powerful together. If everyone's trying to recreate everything, there's a lot of waste work, and if we all work together, we can actually accomplish a lot more. And I think the same is possible in Polkadot. It will look sort of different, but generally speaking, what's powerful about Polkadot is that applications like blockchains can specialize. They can specialize in providing financial services. They can specialize in providing a social media platform or whatever. And these services can ultimately work together, and they can also, out of self-interest, converge on ways of implementing their software that allows them to interoperate. And that's sort of Polkadot provides the precondition for that by enabling cross-chain message passing, and we want to see, I think composability is this really powerful thing, and ultimately we would like to see composability emerge in Polkadot. And so I guess one of the how we interpret that mission and what that means for how we're building Talisman is we're focused on making Talisman usable and support all of the parachains that exist. And so that might, like parachains ultimately have a license to implement whatever they want. They can be completely different in how in the way that they're implemented. However, over time, in order to leverage the value on all of their neighboring chains, it makes sense for them to be compatible. And so I think and a wallet which allows you to use all of the parachains is an important tool for the incentive to exist for those parachains to be composable. If there's 100 users and $1 million of liquidity on chain A, and I can either attract my own users, my own liquidity, build my own application and my own wallet for people to be able to use my chain, or I can be interoperable with that chain. Those users can use my chain, that liquidity can come to my chain, and the people that already have a wallet can just bring their own wallet. That's much better. And so that creates this network effect, of growth that we've seen already in Ethereum, in terms of how smart contracts are implemented. And MetaMask was a really big factor. Like the wallet MetaMask is a really big, is an important piece in enabling, this interoperability, creating a standard for how applications are built and interacted with. So that's our mission, is to enable composability, and I think that will take us in a lot of different directions over time.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And what's worth pointing out, especially, is that in Polkadot, it's a lot more complicated, right? So, like you said, Ethereum has a lot of dApps and they are composable with each other. But Polkadot has 100 parachains on it. I mean, potentially it's going to have 100 parachains on it.
Yep.
And each parachain will have like hundreds of dApps on it. So it's like a multiplicative factor that's built on Polkadot, and each of them will have their own assets and their own wallets. So yeah, just unifying all of them into one space just makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we're building at the moment ultimately has a life cycle of only like, it's not the be all and end all solution, right? If I have an application, let's like assume that Polkadot is successful. There's lots of reasons why Polkadot could fail. Ethereum's network effect at this point could just be unstoppable, and it could be good enough, that everyone just builds there. But I mean, I think Polkadot is objectively better, but that's not always what dictates what wins. But let's assume that Polkadot is as successful as it has the potential to be, and sort of fast forward a decade, what we might expect to see is really sophisticated applications accomplishing like completely unique things. So you might have new social media applications, you might have finance, you might have all kinds of things that we're yet to imagine, and it may not make sense really for an application for you to have like in that sense, the thing that like the wallet is kind of like a browser. It has to be incredibly abstract. But what if some of these applications allow you to have metaverses or video games and exchange value and transact in a video game context? Well, it's not very useful to have a MetaMask-like application anymore, where you go up to the shopkeeper in a browser-based game and then you interact and it pops up a modal. It's like someone standing up in the movie theater. It's immersion breaking. And so I think there will be there will be some number of applications or some number of actions that that Talisman will allow you to do, which will help to accelerate composability. But over a time, I think what we would expect to see is if parachains do leverage the capabilities of Polkadot, and there's more exploration into what blockchains and decentralized systems can accomplish, we're going to see really, really crazy out there use cases that are going to have completely different user flows. And I think those will extend beyond the scope of what Talisman is in its current form is going to be capable of sort of offering. So it's a yeah, I really love the vision of Polkadot and Dotsama, and what we're building at the moment is very much a, you know, we're trying to offer something which is an accelerant to the growth of the ecosystem, because it's, you know, a timeline where Polkadot is successful is the timeline that I want to live in.
Awesome. I know that you are a highly product oriented team, right? You're heavily focused on the users and you're solving their pain points. Plus, I see that your UX and UI is slick and smooth in the alpha version. I've used the alpha version as well. And this is
Awesome.
yeah, and I think this is super necessary as well for this type of product. So can you explain what your user research has been and how did you identify the user journeys and pain points of the users, and what has your process been of coming up with deciding the solution and features, and how are you ensuring that you have the best UI UX in place?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I think, like I said, we've sort of started this journey by just solving basic problems that we've heard a lot of the users of the ecosystem have been complaining about, right? If you use Polkadot.js, you can't see your balances, and, you know, rightfully so. Like, it's like Polkadot.js doesn't actually care, doesn't have any opinion on what chains you're connecting to, right? So it makes sense in the context of Polkadot.js, but you know, a lot of people, that's been their biggest complaint. They want to contribute to the Agyle crowd loan. They want to, you know, leverage some new applications. They've put their hand up and they've said to the parachain teams who are building, we're like, Polkadot.js is really hard and we don't understand it. Is there another way I can do this? And so we've kind of followed the signal that the community has been putting out. And I think so far we've been we've just been reasoning from first principles about what is ultimately useful. I think we're probably going to be switching gear to sort of changing our thinking a little bit going forward. I think there's going to be lots of different ways to interact with Web3 applications, and there's lots of different reasons why users ultimately choose to use Web3 apps, right? So I think one important question that we ask ourselves is like, what job is a user trying to accomplish by using a Web3 application? You know, maybe they are, maybe they are they're in Argentina where there's, you know, the local currency is not very stable, and they want, you know, some USD stable coins so that their wealth is like stable, and they want to, you know, use DeFi applications. Maybe they are investors and they're custodying lots of money, they're managing other people's money, and they want to speculate on crypto projects. Maybe they want to use Subsocial, right? Like, these are all, people are coming from a different sort of they're attempting to accomplish a different goal, or they're trying to complete a different job depending on their unique context. And so a lot of what we're doing is just asking ourselves, you know, asking this question to users, and trying to converge on ideas and solutions that are going to allow people to complete the jobs that they have in their lives a bit better. So yeah, so that's kind of what frames our thinking. And also, I think we have been taking quite like a community orientated approach to product development. You want to have like as tight a feedback loop as possible. So you want to show people what you're doing, and you want to ask them if they think it's good, and you want to find out if it sucks as soon as possible. So we've been doing a lot of product development wherein we you know, sketch stuff out in Figma. So we tend to draw things, you know, rather than taking like a tech first approach. We tend to ask ourselves, like, what's the best, like, if a user wants to accomplish this goal, what should the user experience be idealistically? Like, if we're completely ignorant of how the technology works, and we say, you know, it should be this simple, it should be simple and elegant and work this way, we'll design it, we'll show people, and then after we kind of reconcile that with reality, we then pull this thread and say, okay, the architecture of like how the technology we're building on top of is architected dictates what constraints and invariants we have to work with. And we do this sort of process of integrating those constraints and figuring out what the user flow must be, you know, based on what the technology is, and sort of try to bring these things together into a healthy compromise.
Also, I like the way, I think the articles that you write and whatever content you put out a lot of you use words which are very simple, and you use these stories to convey the tech to people. So I think that's a great way of kind of connecting to users and simplifying the whole technology. Yeah,
thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. We do try very hard to simplify things in a way that they can be understood, and I think we also uniquely have, I guess we form our own opinions about, like, there are some things that in Web3 that you have to teach people, and there are some things which you have to abstract away. I think it's very easy for people to come along and say that, Web3 user experience is bad. Oh, like using Ethereum apps is bad. Like, this is like, we need to abstract the blockchain away. You hear this all the time from from investors and from people who are sort of making a commentary about the maturity of the ecosystem. And I think it's important to remember that, like, there are like some things that actually need to be understood and mastered, and some things that should be abstracted away. Some things that are ultimately unnecessary, and some things which are ultimately necessary, and we can only accept them. Like I said, the architecture of the technology that we build on top of, that dictates the user experience, to some extent. If you use a DEX with ERC20s on Ethereum, you have to approve and transfer, right? Like, these are things that have to be done, and we can wrap them up into one transaction. We can explain, we could give them different names, but like ultimately these things have to be accomplished for the user to get the outcome that they want. And so we can't abstract those away without removing the benefits that Web3 provides, which is that the user custodies their own funds. We can abstract those away by like giving control over to a centralized system, and that's ultimately not what Web3 is about. So yeah, you have to explain some of these concepts to people, and I think otherwise you forfeit ultimately the benefits. And that's not to say that the people who say that blockchain UX is bad and it needs to get more mature, they're also not wrong. And I think that it's also true that the self-sovereignty that you get by using Web3 applications, you get these digital native property rights. You have to custody and protect your identity lest it be stolen and someone else take claim of your property. That's not going to be for everybody, and not everyone's going to want to do that. And so in the future, maybe when the whole world is onboarded into crypto, 80% of the population are actually still using semi-custodial or fully custodial systems in order to get exposure to them. Like, the world around us is like, middlemen exist because people want them to exist. Like they, or not everywhere. Like, some middlemen are entrenched and you can't kick them out, but we have allowed them into our lives because it makes things more convenient. And so it's important to consider that that's a relevant force at play here as well.
Absolutely. It's a feature with benefits, not a bug.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And one interesting aspect of Talisman is that you are combining features of Zerion, which is a portfolio tracking tool, and also MetaMask, which is a wallet. So you have a web app, which is like a little bit like Zerion, and then you have an extension that you can connect to every app. So can you talk a little bit about that, and also maybe contrast with sub.id? How is it different from it?
Yeah, totally. I think, I guess I would just clarify by saying that, our web app aspires to be like Zerion. I don't know if I'd say that it is like that yet. I think our thinking around like web application and extension and the separation between them is that there's two different, you have different products in your life, depending, like it comes back to this: what is the job to be done, right? The job to be done, if my internet banking looks very different from my Apple Pay on my phone. So when I want to purchase something, I grab out my phone, I double tap the middle button, I have this super slick interface. It doesn't tell me how much money's in my bank account. It doesn't tell me, if I'm overdrawn. It doesn't tell me which account it's coming out of. I just have a picture of a card and I pay. Super simple. It's a payment device that does payments very well. And then if I go to my internet banking, I see a list of accounts, a list of balances, a list of transaction history, all these ledgers. I see the interest that's come into my account. And so that's like a different thing. Like, it doesn't make sense for those things to be the same, and for me to have to open up my internet banking, and then scroll through the ledger, choose my account, and then pull up my card to make a payment. So again, yeah, it comes back to this: what is the job to be done? And I think there's two different, like, there's different ways to think about the context in crypto. So I think blockchains and like Web3 applications in general can be used for many things. And so our extension is essentially a payment device. It's a device for transacting. And so, well, not necessarily a payment device, it's a device for transacting. And in crypto land, a transaction might be something that's kind of not completely non-financial, but not purely financial. It might be posting a post on Subsocial. It might be, minting an NFT. It might be, claiming, a proof of attendance token from an event you've been to. It might be all of these funky things. And so our extension is optimized for doing that stuff, for getting out of the way. And I'll give an example of MetaMask, right? So MetaMask will show you that if I go to Compound Finance, the money market application, and I deposit 100 USDC into it, I will get back a tokenized representation of that USDC. And MetaMask, it's not MetaMask's, MetaMask doesn't have an opinion on what you're using MetaMask for. It's really abstract, and it's for doing transactions. And so MetaMask, when I get that token back from Compound, it's called CUSDC, Compound USDC, it will say, you have 100 CUSDC, right? And that's true. That's useful. And MetaMask is not going to specialize in giving me more context about that, because that might be a tokenized representation of my collateral in a money market. It might be an NFT. It might be a proof of attendance thing. It might be, any number of things. And then if I go to Zerion, it will say to me, rather than saying you have 100 CUSDC, it will say you have 100 USDC in Compound, earning you 1.7% interest per annum. And that's providing context about the nature of that thing. And like we mentioned before, that sort of Polkadot, many parachains, many applications on many parachains, you have this combinatorial explosion of things. I think that the ecosystem will be so broad, there'll be so many use cases for Web3 in the future, that it doesn't make sense for a wallet. Like our extension is more like an Apple Pay-like device. And our web application is more of a contextual device. It's a tool for understanding what you've done. It's for investing in crowd loans or contributing to crowd loans. It's for understanding where all of your assets are and your balances. And we're going to build out these, I guess, contextual use cases, these solutions like to jobs to be done into the web application as they arise in the ecosystem. But over time, we can't just expand and support every use case forever, right? But that's what the extension is for. So the extension is, and I kind of expect that our extension will probably get smaller over time as the scope of what it's trying to accomplish broadens. It has to become abstract and unspecific. And our web application will be this companion application which provides context. And so the analogy is, the web application is your internet banking, the extension is your Apple Pay. They're both specialized for different things. So yeah, I hope that clarifies kind of the thinking a little bit around why both. And I guess also there is a full screen version, like part of our extension. So we have a typical little modal, just like MetaMask, but you can also open it in full screen. If you open up MetaMask in full screen, it will just show you a bigger version of the modal, whereas we have a different UI layout. And I think it makes sense for the extension to get out of the way most of the time. And if you actually want to dig in and understand your assets across all of there's going to be hard problems to solve where we need to provide tools to users to get control of their stuff in Web3. So many assets, many chains, many assets on split across chains. You need to be able to wrangle all that stuff. And so the full screen aspect of our extension is kind of like helping you to, it's like a control panel that's going to allow you to get control of your assets, understand where they all are, and without having to do this in a mobile way where there's many nested menus and all sorts of things. Like you have a lot more screen real estate on desktop to be able to accomplish, managing your assets. So yeah.
Awesome. And also in the Dotsama space, are there any other products solving a similar kind of problem? I know of Nova Wallet, but I think it's more focused on the mobile. It has a mobile native app. So do you know of any other products, and what do you think are your biggest differentiators?
Yeah, sure. I think, well, I guess if we were to do like a typical competitor analysis, I think like projects like Nova Wallet come up. So like I think mobile wallets are amazing. Like first of all, the install base of mobile phones compared to desktop computers is much higher. So it makes a lot of sense to build a mobile wallet. And I think if successful, like the trajectory for Talisman is to eventually build a mobile wallet too. It makes sense as a place to store your keys, which is secure and separate from your desktop. Like that makes sense. And if you don't, I think there's probably an upper limit to how much applications you can utilize on your mobile, especially if a lot of them are not built in a mobile first way. But even just to hold coins and do basic things like staking, mobile wallets make loads of sense. There's also Clover. So Clover have built, I don't know if they forked MetaMask or whether they built it themselves, but they have like a browser extension as well. They are a multi-chain wallet. They have supported some number of chains, and ultimately Clover are building a parachain, and so they intend to use. I think this is their vision, to like use their mobile wallet in conjunction with their parachain to aggregate user assets to their parachain and make a simple user experience, which is a really admirable pursuit. I think that's a good vision. Like you can make it so that users only have to pay, transaction fees in your native currency, etc. But I guess, like I said, we have this vision of parachain composability, and parachains are both in competition with each other, and they are each other's greatest strength. The more value locked up in all of the parachains and in the ecosystem of parachains, the more of an incentive there is to also create a parachain and enter into the ecosystem. So, this is a virtuous cycle. So they are like, each parachain is its greatest strength is every other parachain, but they are competing for liquidity and for users. And what we saw was a distinct lack of at least a browser extension wallet. So there are mobile wallets which are focused on supporting all of the parachains. So unlike Clover Wallet, we aren't building a parachain. We don't have a horse in that race. And so we can kind of treat we can be, I think, a better accelerant to the emergence and overall growth of the ecosystem that's going to make all rise, lift the tide and rise all the boats. Because everyone will be happy to integrate us because we don't intend to aggregate user assets away from their chain. We don't actually have an adversarial relationship to any of the chains. And so that's kind of our goal with Talisman and the key differentiator. I think in terms of product, like what differentiates us as a product is definitely our sort of like product and user UX centric approach. But we intend to invest pretty heavily in productizing and harnessing a lot of the things that Parity are building and that are unique to Polkadot. So at the moment, a lot of projects are kind of figuring out how to bootstrap liquidity. Some of them are bridging to other ecosystems and incentivizing liquidity to come from other ecosystems. Some of them are doing things like Agyle has done or Parallel has done, where Dot that is contributed or Kusama that's contributed via their system, they offer a future on that Dot, and then so they have this sort of like derivative asset which they use to bootstrap liquidity on their chain. and I guess Polkadot specific tech. So people are looking to these other ecosystems and they're pulling in, I guess, standards and capabilities from other chains. And so I think other products like Clover and like Math Wallet and things like that are focused on uniting all of these chains. And I think by focusing on a multi-chain wallet, but specifically constrained to Polkadot parachains, we get to explore, we're going to have the opportunity to explore lots of capabilities which are specific to Polkadot. So, Parity is working on client side, on light clients that can easily be spun up for any chain. So it's possible that in the future, Talisman will be able to be fully decentralized. It won't depend on any RPC. But this won't be viable for chains that aren't substrate chains necessarily. So if you wanted that to work for Ethereum as well, if you're a multi-chain wallet like Clover or Math Wallet and you want that to work for Binance Smart Chain and for Cosmos, it's not going to work, right? And so their strategy is more about horizontal integration. How can we gain users by virtue of supporting the most chains? And I think we're focused on applying new capabilities that are specific in Polkadot and creating a unique product that has its own unique benefits, like being more decentralized and more censorship resistant. We want to look at multi-sigs, proxy accounts. There's all of these weird and wonderful things in the world of Polkadot that are yet to really be applied, and they're yet to be implemented as into the social consensus of what all the chains support. And so by applying those, I think we will eventually come up with a really interesting, unique product that's really highly differentiated. But to be honest with you, for now, Talisman is very new, and other than the fact that you can see your Polkadot balances, there's not that much that's super unique about it. But I think that our mission focus is going to change that over time.
Sure. And also, can you explain your Spirit keys? I understand they're NFTs which give access to your alpha version, but is there any other utility to them?
Yeah, sure. So the Spirit keys we have, for those who don't know, who are hearing about Talisman for the first time, we have released NFTs on Remark called Spirit keys. And if you hold a Spirit key, you can be an early access user of the extension. Really, the purpose for this, for us, is that we want to build a community of people who are early adopters, people who are intellectually curious, people who are really passionate about the ecosystem, and so by giving out Spirit keys to people who have performed certain actions, like using our crowd loans dashboard, or using our web application to invest in crowd loans, sorry to be more specific, or by joining our community, contributing in certain ways, showing up to community calls. We're cultivating a community of people. We're creating an on-chain record, ultimately, of all of the people who have supported the project and who, without them, Talisman would not exist. And so, the purpose for now is to give them early access to the extension. We will continue to use them as a permissioning device in order to roll things out to our early adopters, our super fans, before they are rolled out to other people. And also, in general, Talisman we have a vision of being community owned and ultimately allowing Talisman to be supported and maintained by the community and continue to prosper in a decentralized way. And so by creating an on-chain record of all of the people who have contributed to the project, when the time comes to instantiate more incentives or different incentives, we know who everyone is, and people, we don't have to, rack our brains to remember, who was that person who contributed in this way? Who is that person who translated our article about the alpha release into Thai? Or, who was the person who moderated our Discord for a few weeks? So the utility for us is creating an on-chain record of our contributors, and we'll continue to invest in those keys being useful. And if you want to get involved and contribute to Talisman, and you want to sort of have a verifiable proof of your contribution, it makes sense to seek one out and start sort of offering feedback and figuring out, put your hand up and figure out how you can contribute.
Got it. You're also, apart from serving the end users, you're also serving the developers with your app, right? So you say in your article that developers need more control over the usage patterns of their applications in order to make them
Mm.
compelling and coherent. So you give them the ability to customize the transaction experience in Talisman. Can you explain that to the listeners? How do you do that, and what are its implications in terms of ecosystem growth?
Yeah, sure. So I guess now, and I think this is one of the more experimental areas of the project, and I think it's worth flagging that this might, this like any product or any experiment or anything that we do based on a set of assumptions, our assumptions might be wrong, and this might not be useful. So, however, our view is this: Web3 user experience is unique and difficult, and there's aspects about interacting with Web3 applications that users ultimately need to master. If we want to, like I said, it's difficult to be self-sovereign. Most people will not do this, right? Most people prefer having some number of trusted third parties in their lives, and that makes sense. And so, so if you take the user experience of Ethereum, for example, you interact with a smart contract. You click on a web application. Hey, I want to swap one coin for one coin, and MetaMask pops up a modal, and it shows you a big blob of JSON, of JavaScript object notation, which says it describes the nature of the transaction. And if you're a non-technical person, if you don't know what JSON is, if you're not a programmer, if you don't understand how smart contracts work, it's very hard for you to you take that information and verify anything about what you're undertaking. And also it's quite hard to, unless you're using a smart contract which is known and people have used it before, and the code is published, the decompiled code is on Etherscan as well as the source code. You can't even sort of get any human readable method names about what you're doing. So if I swap tokens on Uniswap, I'm calling the swap exact tokens for exact tokens function. And you don't have to be that technical to know that, that kind of describes what you're doing. So that I might feel, by seeing that, I might feel a bit reassured. But ultimately, there's this breakdown of context where we're failing to give people the information that they need to understand what's going on, to be confident, and also to manage their risk. And so we are trying to attack this in a bunch of different ways. So first of all, assuming that you trust the application, like we're making it so that the application can, when it is implemented and you say, if the user clicks this button, it's going to craft a transaction to swap one coin for one coin, we're going to allow the application developer to make more of a statement, to provide the Talisman extension with information about what the application developer supposes is happening. And so this will ultimately, assuming that users trust the application, this will ultimately lead to more clarity over what you're doing. So if you're minting an NFT, why not have a link to the image of that NFT? Or if you're swapping an NFT or something like that, it's like, hey, you're about to sell your Bored Ape, and then here's a picture of it, and it's clearer that that's what you're doing, right? If you're swapping a coin, it might say you're swapping a coin, especially in the context of Polkadot, where a transaction may do a bunch of different things. It might move around across a bunch of different chains. I think it's important that the user understands what they're doing. So this is still assuming that they trust the application to be honest about what the application is actually doing. But it's important to know, hey, you're about to move your assets, cross-chain. They're going to go on to Manta. There's going to be a private transaction. You're going to get a token. It's going to come back. And then the user can say, oh, actually, I don't want to use that privacy system because, I'm a business, I'm a regulated company, and, I'm not allowed to do that. Or, hey, I don't want to send it to that chain because whatever reason. So just giving the application developer the ability to present to the user more information about what they're doing, and also use visual language that is more familiar, so that we can create, some collective knowledge about what interacting with Web3 applications look like. And then the other aspect of that is, like, we also need to provide the user some verifiable statements about, about what the transaction is. So that because they can't always trust the application. If you're using an application that you've never used before, you don't know who the founders are, they're anonymous, so on and so forth. You don't know if they're going to say you're about to mint an NFT, but you're actually about to send them some money. You still need this sort of, like, it's important to verify. The saying goes, don't trust, verify. And we want to try and improve a non-technical user's ability to verify. And that's a really hard problem that we're thinking about a lot. But if you think about the two things in which Talisman has the ability to surface to the user, the two categories of things. One is statements that the application is making about what you're supposedly doing. So if, for example, if you go and connect Polkadot.js to an application, it says an application self-identifying as, Agyle is asking to connect your Polkadot.js accounts. Do you want to do this? And that's a good example of what we're talking about here. So we need to tell the user that an application is supposing that it's about to do this thing. The second is verifiable statements. So we can, it's reasonably easy to based on the extrinsic that you're broadcasting, to figure out, what palette is this extrinsic destined for. So maybe, and you can also figure out what chain are you interacting with. For example, the hash of the Genesis block is included in transactions, and this allows you to ensure that a transaction you broadcast doesn't go and get relayed on another network, and that, like, it sort of creates a mapping a link between the transaction and its intended chain. And so we can make a statement which is, you're about to use the Agyle chain, you're about to use the Agyle DEX palette, and Agyle, the website agyle.com, is supposing that you're about to swap one coin for one coin. Like, those three things together make a pretty compelling statement that you're not getting defrauded, that there's not a man in the middle attack, right? Or that this application is what you think it is, and it's malicious, and it's not malicious. So this whole domain of transaction experience, I think, can be improved upon substantially, and it's one of the areas that we're most interested in. And I think the benefit is that, while there will always be some number of people who don't want to go down the Web3 rabbit hole and custody their own money, they don't have the skills, they don't have the courage or the belief in themselves to be able to do that. They don't want to accept the risk, whatever the reason. We can make it easier if we can lower the barrier to being a self-sovereign individual. I think we can have more people who harness this technology without having to wait until we have large systems with many middlemen and trusted third parties who are going to extract the value and are going to basically, like, all of the value arbitrage that comes from doing crypto is then competed away by bringing these intermediaries in who manage risk on your behalf. So if our goal is to make this stuff easier and make solutions that level people up and make them more competent.
That is super interesting for sure. And also, you raised, I think, $2.3 million from the VCs and angel investors. I'm assuming currently that caters to your operations and expenses and salaries and so on. So are you planning to come up with some kind of a revenue model? And what is a sustainability plan for you? Like, for example, I can say for MetaMask, right, they make money by charging a swap fee. And they also have this institutional offering, which makes money for them. So do you have any such plans or any revenue model or business model that you're thinking about?
Yeah, definitely. I think we have many ideas. I think that, like with startups, there's a million ways to cut things and approach things. At this stage, we're still focused on really early like product development and innovation, and we're going to be, this year is a year of focusing really heavily on user growth. So we're not going to be sort of locking in any revenue model yet, but I can sort of share some ideas. I think one, it's important to have ultimately the goal here is to make something sustainable, right? Like, so my previous experience is running services business. I've run we've been able to go as quickly as we have and build Talisman as quickly as we have and get to market as quickly as possible, because we have lots of experience with managing external stakeholders, building teams, building products, all these things. But sort of the goal here is to make something, software has no marginal cost of replication. And so if you can build something which then, you can build it and then you can get revenue, and then you can, acquire new users in a way that where the lifetime value of those users is going to be more than it costs you to acquire them. And you can, acquire them without the cost of acquiring them growing exponentially over time. You have something magical. You have a product company that's sustainable, that's going to get lift off. And so that's, definitely our goal. I think staking is an interesting one. There's allowing users to stake is and sort of taking a clip there makes sense. I think taking a clip on swaps is a reasonably good idea. However, I think the domain of like building a wallet is hard, and the way that MetaMask monetizes is that Consensus acquired AirSwap, which is a DEX aggregator, and then they monetize through like using AirSwap. And so in order to build a wallet with all of the amazing properties that I'm describing and build a Polkadot native multi-chain DEX aggregator is probably not the path forward for us immediately. That's a hard problem. But there are certainly interesting opportunities to use systems that are available to us, like the Agyle DEX, and build, use the EVM plus capabilities they're creating to extend the DEX and to create some kind of like referral model or like token buyback model on top of people doing swaps on Agyle. But I think there's going to be many DEXs in Polkadot. And so I think swapping without building an aggregator is going to be probably something that is like redundant quite quickly. Another thing we're considering is kind of like the Zapify model. So if Polkadot is this ecosystem of many chains and applications, and it is complex to navigate and traverse, but there are strategies that can be acted out, like putting some collateral in a system on chain A, minting a stable coin, moving it over somewhere else, and then putting it in a system to earn yield. And it's this multi-step thing. And that can be turned into like a one-click action where like a zap, it's like zapping into an LP pool on Ethereum, an LP position, sorry. And then taking a clip on that kind of makes sense. I think there's also some weird and wonderful ideas that I think are now possible thanks to the emergence of like social tokens and NFTs. We could create a direct-to-consumer model. This is like going back to Winamp skins. We could become a producer of cultural capital and sell NFTs. I think that's a bit orthogonal, and would probably be ultimately a big distraction, because when you do introduce a revenue model, you want to scale it. And so if it's not congruent with building a good wallet and a wallet that accomplishes the mission of accelerating composability, I think it's unlikely that we'll implement that. But yeah, there's a lot of ideas that we have. I don't want to. I'm uninclined to share my most interesting ones because we are quite uncertain about whether or not, like what direction we'll go in. But like I mentioned, this year for us is we're mostly focused on continuing to talk to users, understand what the jobs to be done are, and how Talisman can help with that, grow our user base, grow our community, and grow our community of sort of contributors and super fans.
Sure, that totally makes sense. What have been your biggest learnings from your closed alpha release? Maybe top three.
Hmm. Um, yeah, I guess I think probably not to over engineer things. It's definitely not to over engineer things and to listen to what the job to be done is, right? So we have this idealistic mission of accelerating composability, and so, for example, one of the things we have implemented in Talisman is that Talisman will like so current parachain applications are architected in such a manner, like they're all built by the parachain teams themselves. And so the parachains, the applications, they handle the problem of connecting to the RPC, figuring out the chain state. But in a future where you might have an application that uses 5 different chains under the hood, in the same way that Xerion or Zappa uses like multiple Ethereum protocols under the hood, you have to query information from different chains. You have to manage all that state, and it might make sense for a wallet to solve that problem for you to just ask the wallet, or ask the wallet be the oracle. Oracle's a bad word because that means something different in crypto. The wallet be the thing that helps you figure that out. So we've implemented the ability. We've started doing the work to implement people being able to query chain state through Talisman, as well as Talisman itself taking the transaction and relaying it and broadcasting it, rather than the application doing that. But that's maybe not necessary for now, or like it's not necessary yet. I think we want to move in this direction of decentralization, but it's not necessary yet. So what probably made more sense to work on was just to focus on supporting more balances, and focus on supporting NFTs, and focus on these jobs to be done, these things that users are demanding. So we're trying to strike a balance between Talisman being something which enables a new market to emerge, and that's ultimately the biggest businesses, the biggest, most successful organizations, they create markets rather than just capturing an existing market. But also there's jobs to be done which we have not yet accomplished. And so I think it's prioritization and not over engineering things has been the biggest lesson so far. And that's something we have to always improve upon. I think the other thing is maybe the other lesson is that the is probably around community. We've run this Sentinels program, which is, we've basically said users, like community members, are welcome to join what we call the Sentinels program, where you can contribute to Talisman, you can moderate the Discord, you can offer feedback, you can write articles, you can make memes, you can do whatever you want, and we will reward you. We've used this as like a feeder program to attract people who are interested in the vision, and so we can ultimately discriminate over which of these people we want to work with in the long term, and grow the community organization that we want Talisman to ultimately be. And I think one of the things that we underestimated was, people actually. I already knew this to be true, but like it's really interesting to see how much this has been reinforced. People want intrinsic value so much more, or certain people want intrinsic value, depends on sort of where you are in life, where on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs you are, want intrinsic value more so than incentives. They don't want to be, they want to be told what has value. They want to be told that their contributions have value, or be given clear feedback. They want to be told what direction to go in. They want to be part of something that feels special to them. They want to be part of a movement. They don't just want incentives. They don't just want tokens or cash or whatever for doing something here and there. They want to be part of something. And I think, although I feel like uniquely, this is what I have already learned in creating a services business, which I feel like we had a really amazing culture, and we did a lot of really great stuff, built a large reputation. There's lots of amazing stories about like all of the happenings within that team and that community. But I'm continuing to see how much people desire, intrinsic value and community and meaning. above all else.
And can you detail out your immediate milestones and maybe also the roadmap for the next quarter to 6 months?
Yeah, sure. I think I won't go through everything, but we
Yeah, just on a high level. Yeah.
yeah, sure. We intend to focus mostly on user acquisition and integrations. So we're going to be launching a public beta probably in around February. So we will switch tact, and using the Talisman extension will not be this secret, scarce thing for the most devoted acolytes. It will be public, and anyone will be able to use it. And we will focus on growing the number of users. In advance of that public beta, we want to organize to have as many integrations as possible with parachain teams, so that people can not only install and set up Talisman, but Talisman does everything that they need it to do, and they can remove Polkadot.js. We are going to be integrating a few features into our web application. We need to revamp that. I think we have used the web application in order to accomplish our short-term goals of articulating our value proposition, getting some contributors and getting some users, building a relationship with them. And we need to reprioritize the focus of the web application and add some different features and explore different monetization strategies with the web app. We are going to be beginning the work to set up a foundation to be able to launch a DAO, so that we can eventually have a DAO treasury that is governed by the community. And there's a lot of work to do there. And we're going to be we're a team of about 9. We'll be 10 in a couple of weeks, and we intend to over this year probably nearly double that team. And so we need to implement more formal processes and practices for prioritization internally. Like I said earlier, my co-founders used to work with me at Flex. And so we've been working together building Web3 apps for years. And it's very easy to collaborate to do something like Talisman on an ad hoc basis, but that doesn't really scale. So we need to add more formal processes so that more people can participate. Those are probably the main things.
Got it. And lastly, you have the spiritual core to all your offerings. Like, I mean, at least in the names, you have the Talisman and the Spirit Key, and the meditations of the Paraverse, and even in your art. So I find this very intriguing, and I just wanted to know, do you have any backstory to it?
Yeah, great question. I think that we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. We're all trying to self-actualize. We're all sort of living a similar experience in the sense that we need struggle to have meaning, and we're all trying to overcome our limitations and level up. And there's a book called Hero of a Thousand Faces, which describes this idea of the hero's journey. So the hero's journey is a story, a structure of storytelling, which is present in every story in our culture. All of our cultural stories are ultimately the same. They are, whether it's Star Wars or the Bible or whatever. And this goes back to a story called I think the first hero's journey is supposed the Epic of Gilgamesh, and it's basically, it articulates something true, which is non-obvious and non-deterministic about being human, and that is that we are one thing. We are ourselves, and then something calls us. We go into the unknown. In the unknown, there's danger, there's possibly death, there's chaos. We return from the unknown, having overcome, experience new challenges and overcome those challenges, and we bring something back to our community that benefits everybody. And in doing so, we are transformed. We are different. It's like at the end of Lord of the Rings when Frodo gets on the ship. He doesn't go back to the Shire. Like, he can't go back to the Shire. He's traumatized. He's been to Mount Doom. He's different. He's not, Peter Pan. He doesn't want to live in Neverland anymore. He's grown up. And so he goes elsewhere. And I think that crypto fundamentally is like a hero's journey for people. So people learn about crypto, they go down the rabbit hole. In order to learn about decentralized systems, you have to learn about centralized systems. You have to learn about these like age-old economic principles. You have to learn about politics. You have to learn about where money comes from. You have to learn about the nature of the world we live in and how the cogs turn and the machinery works, in order to understand what the value proposition ultimately of cryptocurrency is, and why it is ultimately the pendulum swinging, back in the opposite direction of what we currently have. And throughout that journey, maybe you go all in, you don't sell, you end up with a bunch of tax liability, you buy a bunch of coins that go to zero, you burn yourself, but you're different. You're like, hang on, I can't go back now. Like, now that I know that this exists, and now that I have expanded my consciousness and my understanding of this world, I can't just go back to thinking about there's something here. And that's my experience of crypto. And I think that's most people's experience of crypto, is they discover it, they learn by doing. There's failure, there's pain, there's success, and then they're changed, and they don't go back to, it's like how we don't go and live in the woods and opt out of the fiat economy. It's good. There's something about it that's compelling, and it's worth integrating. And I think I think that there is a way. I think that this hero's journey story is actually encoded in our biology. There are archetypes and images and feelings and thoughts that are baked in, that are evolutionary. And I think that you can speak to them. I think that you can invoke them in people, and you can make them curious and inspired and interested by invoking mysticism. And ultimately, we want people to become emotionally invested in Talisman. Otherwise, they're not going to maintain it, and it will fail, and it will disappear and crumble, like all things, when people are no longer invested in its survival. So we have to create some mythology. I think mythology is innately human and foundational, and we need it. So that's, and it's kind of an art project, this is the part that I enjoy, is like rallying people around these symbols and these ideas. And so yeah, it's a bit hard to describe. I think we lack the language to describe a lot of spiritual and mythical things. But yeah, like, what we're ultimately trying to say to people is, come with us on this journey. We don't know where it will lead. We don't know what will happen, but we are going to transform, and you might, whether that's good or bad, all we know is that it's the way. So, and that's kind of present in our artwork. The other thing we're trying to accomplish is just to articulate, personify the polka dot ecosystem in a way that's easy to understand. So we can borrow visual language from movies, comic books, our cultural stories that we're all used to and that we like and we celebrate, and we can render the polka dot ecosystem in this color, in this way, and make it more approachable and accessible and easy to engage with, because Polkadot is a technology initiative. Perhaps the reasons for it are political or spiritual for the individuals, but it is ultimately a technology endeavor, and that doesn't resonate with everybody. It's not easily understood by everybody, but I think there is a universal language which you can use to engage everybody, and that is mythology and symbols and spirituality.
I really love that. Yeah, and Agyle, this has been an amazing conversation. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for coming on to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Alpha. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into Web3 Buzz. Follow me at Web3 Alpha Buzz on Twitter where I post informational threads on interesting Web3 projects. If you would like to access more information about the guests, please see the episode description.